All right, folks, this should be a fun one. Let's watch it all go down together because this is not clean. This is not neat. This is not cut and dry like it was in 2019 with LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Here we are, just probably about 10 hours since we last left you, and quite the debate and discussion on the college football playoffs. Of course, that's why we're here. College football playoffs for the 7th year. Much controversy, much to debate every year, except for 2019 to a certain extent. 2019 being the outlier, but this has been a mess each and every year other than 2019. So here we have 2020, and it would have been a shame if everything would have lined up a little bit differently, but it did not. Notre Dame got their doors blown off by Clemson 34-10, and that 34-10 score does not depict in any way the dominance that Clemson showed or the ineptitude that Notre Dame showed on a neutral field when Clemson had its starting quarterback and its 3 defensive players, Mike Jones, Tyler Davis up front, and their defensive captain and leader, James Skalski, back in the starting lineup playing at full strength. Clemson dominated the game. They led 31-3. They led 31-3 sometime in the third quarter. Now, conspiracy theorists, I'm going to throw this one out there. It just hit me. And many of you may have already thought of this. If I'm Dabo Swinney and I'm playing Notre Dame and I'm thinking about the other possibilities of teams that I could face in the college football playoff, and I'm winning 31-3 in the third quarter, and I'm thinking it was a 24-3 game at halftime. I've got my full team. I think I've got a pretty good read on Notre Dame, like I did Ohio State in 2016. Maybe I wouldn't mind playing this team for a third time. Maybe I wouldn't mind playing them for a third time. Maybe we better let off the throttle, not beat them with 3 more touchdowns and put up 52. Keep it at 34-10. They get a touchdown. 34-10 isn't good for anybody that watched the game. For those people that just take in the score and think 34-10 is not good, but Notre Dame didn't get embarrassed, so they're still a playoff team. Conspiracy theory offered. I leave it up to you. Shop Amazon using the link that we provide in the description section of all the videos. I should probably provide it here, is what I should be doing to make it as easy as possible. But I'm going to ask you to go to any of the videos, look in the description section, grab the link next to Amazon, do your Amazon shopping using that link. It helps us build the channel. You can also follow me on Twitter, of course, at MarkRogersTV. I'm going to get to the comments right now. Of course, the phone lines are open right there, 860-325-3687, 860-325-3687. And I'm going to get to the live chat. Also, I'm going to take David Pollock's suggestion, his proposal, and offer it up to you because I think it's a pretty damn good one. There are some logistics that don't work based on how we're set up currently, but from a purely football standpoint, it works great. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, good morning. It's Michael. How you doing, sir?
Hey, Michael. How are you?
Not too bad. Just working on a few hours sleep, as I'm sure you are. I've been thinking about this all night. And would I be crazy to say that it's possible that both IU and Northwestern will get a New Year's Six today?
Well, I don't think it's crazy. We worked out the slots a couple nights ago. That was, I believe, with you and a few other callers. And aside from the 2 playoff games with the 4 teams there, again, we've got Cotton, Orange, Peach. What am I missing? Fiesta. So we've got 4 games. We've got 8 slots. And I'm thinking that those teams are going to be Oklahoma, Oregon, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Indiana, Northwestern, Iowa State, Well, I miss Cincinnati. I miss Cincinnati there. So we get Cincinnati in there.
Coastal Carolina.
And Coastal Carolina, that's undefeated. So maybe they don't.
Okay.
I'll tell you who I would select off the top of my head would be Oklahoma, Oregon, Florida, Georgia, Coastal Carolina, Cincinnati, Indiana, Northwestern. And I would leave out Iowa State and North Carolina with 3 losses.
I can deal with that. Also, one other thing I won't keep you long because I know you can ready to get same with Coach. Where do you see Iowa going for their bowl game?
I have not done bowl projections, so I would just be spitting. I would just be spitting out, spitballing it. So I'm not going to be able to give you any kind of expert analysis on bowl projections. I have not looked at them. I've not looked at the pecking order of the conferences and what bowl games. And I know that we are going to be missing, I think we're up to about 10 bowl games.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
I will say this, Michael. Based on what they typically are in the Big Ten, if we get the 2 teams in the New Year's 6 and Ohio State in the playoff, then Iowa's the next team. So they would play in the what has been the Citrus and Capital One Bowl against an SEC team.
Okay. And another thing I'm trying to figure out too is the Big Ten still have ties with the Outback Bowl?
Yes. Although in recent years there's been some kind of a contingency with the ACC as well, but that's never been met. So it's always been going back to the early 90s when it was the Hall of Fame Bowl, the SEC and the Big Ten, and of course Minnesota and Auburn last year.
All right. Sounds good. As always, have a great show, sir.
Thanks, Michael. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the call, man. Have a good one.
Okay, take care. You too. Bye-bye.
Our guy Michael on here loves his Boilers, loves the Big Ten. Notre Dame fan is not happy. Notre Dame fan is sad. Notre Dame fan may get a little bit of a lift here in a few minutes. I've released my top 25, and no, it was not easy selecting a 4th team. It was not easy. I could both criticize and defend Cincinnati, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Oklahoma even. David Pollock tweeted the other day, and I don't follow David Pollock, so I don't know how I saw this tweet, but I've always respected his opinion and also considered that this comes from a guy who played the sport, college football, for you younger folks, at the highest of levels. Like he's an all-time great college football player, like 2 or 3 time consensus All-American, won defensive awards, just probably has rooms filled with awards. Great all-time college football player, probably will be selected to all century teams. That good at the college level, hurt his neck, hurt his back in the NFL, so he only played a handful of games and was done after being a first-round pick by the Cincinnati Bengals. But I will convey what he suggested, which from a football standpoint is awesome and pretty much in line with what I've proposed, but it doesn't necessarily work because of the absence of the FCS and the group of 5. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, who's on the line.
Hey, what's up, Mark Rogers, Jabbar Jones?
Hey, what's going on?
What's going on, man? Nothing much. Wow, yesterday was crazy, man. Some really good football teams going at it, and it was a really good football. But going to talking about the New Year's 6 bowls and stuff, I kind of agree with your list. The only team I disagree with is Coastal Carolina. I still think that the American Conference is just a higher conference than the Sun Belt. It's a lot of things. You look at the quality of teams that's in the American and look at the quality of teams that's in the Sun Belt. In the American Conference, you're going through Temple, UCF. I mean, USF, they're not as good, but still SMU and all those teams, Memphis, Cincinnati. And in the Sun Belt, you go through Georgia State, Georgia Southern, Troy. But Troy is not a good team this year. South Alabama, ULM. You're not going through the same quality of teams. So when people sit here and say Coastal Carolina's schedule is better, I highly disagree. I think it's kind of one of those things where people say, well, when we go through the Power 5, you're going through 8 or 10 Power 5 teams. That's entirely different from a Group of 5 team going through just playing one team in a New Year's Six Bowl. So, I mean, I just think that's the only thing I would disagree with. But other than that, I mean, the list is fine.
Well, I completely agree with you that the American Conference over the past few seasons has arguably been as good as the ACC minus Clemson and the Pac-12. That could be an argument that they've been that good. Memphis has been really good. Houston in the past, Tulsa this year, Cincinnati over the last 3 seasons. Yeah, it's not only a deep conference in regards to quality, it's played at the highest level against really good competition. And in this BCS/playoff era, as you well know, the American Conference has acquitted itself very well against the Power 5, and especially in the New Year's Six. Houston beat Florida State. UCF beat Auburn. What did we have last year? We had Memphis played a good game that went down to the final 5 minutes with Penn State. And we could I'm talking about in the New Year's Six. But yeah, Memphis beat Ole Miss last year by 5 points. Yep. So the American Conference is certainly good, but also understand that Coastal Carolina beat Louisiana, who beat Iowa State by 17 points on the road. They beat BYU. They beat Appalachian State. That I know it's not an example from this year, but Appalachian State handled South Carolina and North Carolina last year. So the Sun Belt has improved considerably. It's not the American Conference, no. But Coastal Carolina went through a pretty tough schedule for a Sun Belt team. And also understand that the schedules are watered down because of no non-conference games this year.
Yeah, but the thing is the Sun Belt only has 3 good teams. The rest of the teams are not good.
Sure.
And the American Conference, I mean, you look at the American Conference in the Mountain West. You look at budget, talent. It's not even close compared to the Sun Belt. Like the average Sun Belt conference is $30 million budget. The lowest American Conference budget, I believe, is $50 million. It's not even close. And like I said, like you're going through teams that top 25 FCS teams can beat, like Georgia State, Georgia Southern. Like a top 25 or at least a top 10 could beat those teams. And on top of that, it's just that, yes, they did beat the Big 12, but we all knew the Big 12 wasn't ready for a season. At the beginning of the season, we all knew the Big 12 was just out of whack. You know, and North Dakota State already beat those teams that the Sun Belt teams has beat in all. So,
yeah, I don't disagree with you that the American Conference is the 6th best conference. And again, with the Pac-12 coming down considerably in recent years, and with the ACC not being a good conference since 2017 outside of Clemson, that it's as deep as those 2 conferences to a certain extent in the middle, and that the Sun Belt is not as good as those other conferences. No question about that. But the Sun Belt has improved, and I would have no issue with Coastal Carolina being in the New Year's Six, having gone undefeated with wins over Appalachian State, BYU, and Louisiana. It would have been nice to have seen them play Louisiana again and notch another quality win, but they didn't get that chance.
All right, man. It's nice talking to you like always, man. I enjoy your show, man. I love hearing your knowledge about football, man. Appreciate it.
We appreciate the call. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the show. Yeah, we're just going to kick back and take all this in. So we've got the Clemson boys there, and we've got, of course, the conference championship games from yesterday. So what did these tell us? They told us that Alabama's not invincible. I believe that Alabama's the best team in the country. I've been saying that since about week 3 or 4. I picked Alabama to win the national championship over Ohio State at the beginning of the season. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Well, Mark, now that I'm a bit more rational, I called back in. It's Ben. I'm a bit more rational now.
You did fine last night.
Last night my mind was going kind of crazy. So, first off, I would like to apologize to all Ohio State fans around the world because I knew that they would absolutely destroy us, I think. So, yeah, I would like to apologize to them. And now I got to say one thing. If Texas A&M doesn't get in this, like Jimbo Fisher said, this is, that's wrong. I think Texas A&M deserves a spot. They have one loss, the best team in the nation, and they beat us. They've done good this season. I think they have to be in over Notre Dame. Even though they didn't go to their championship game, they didn't go to the SEC championship game. I think they still deserve to be in. Of course, I think it'll be close. So after all of that, and I watched your national, what is it called? Your smart top 25.
Oh, my top 25. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, top 25 makes sense. I watched that, and I agreed with it. I would flip Notre Dame and Texas A&M, but that's your preference. So now that you have your top 25 that makes sense out, with all that goes on, what is your prediction for a Cincinnati team and a Oklahoma team that are the league champions, or they're conference champions of both their conferences, and then Florida, of course. What's your idea of what you think the New Year's Six Bowls might look like?
Oh my goodness, this is not something that I've taken up. I just said this to the last caller, or it might have been the caller before that. This is something that maybe I should take on more frequently than I do. But to make bold projections, I've not looked at. I can spitball it right now. I can just give you a fast, bam, bam, bam. This is what it probably would be. But I can't necessarily. I get a little package at the door. Very nice. I can't necessarily do this with. So put it this way, Ben. When I give you analysis and when I post videos, I do that with thought and intent to do the best job that I can. So I would just be throwing teams down, but I can certainly do that. Let's say Fiesta Bowl, I'm going to go Oregon, Oklahoma. Orange Bowl, I'm going to go Florida and North Carolina. I might run out of teams here. Peach, I might go with. Who else do we have playing here? Maybe Georgia, Indiana. We've got Cincinnati going to the Cotton Bowl against. Who's left? Cincinnati and
Oklahoma, maybe?
The Fiesta Bowl has always had a preference toward Pac-12 and Big 12 teams. If you go through the history of the Fiesta Bowl just from a geographic standpoint, that doesn't mean that they will stay with that, but they've typically stayed with the Pac-12 and the Big 12. Again, that doesn't mean that they will. There's a whole pecking order of how they select. So to do this correctly, you would have to know what teams are going to make it, and then the selection order of the bowls, because they get a different selection order each year to make it fair. So let's say the Peach Bowl is not selecting last all the time. They rotate it. So they're basing these selections on what they think are going to be good matchups, what they think are going to be good television ratings more than anything. And in a typical year, what teams are going to attract the most people to the stadium? What fan bases are going to travel the best? But the TV ratings trump everything. And so that's why these bowl games will grab SEC and Big Ten teams and Oklahoma, Texas, USC right out of the gate over anybody else.
And like you said, I think some big, this year, the travel aspect of it all, the ticket sales aspect of it all is kind of down, of course, because of coronavirus and stuff like that. So, not like we all know, like not many people can go to games. So I think, yeah, of course they want to get like really good games within the 6 bowls to boost those ratings. Like, because I think a great game I know a lot of people would like to watch is a rematch of the 2008 National Championship.
Oh, yeah.
Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
I think Florida, Oklahoma, I would love to watch that personally. Spencer Rattler, versus Kyle Trask. I'd like to see that.
Sure.
And then another question about Florida and Kyle Pitts. You probably heard that he's leaving for the NFL draft.
Sure.
He's foregoing his senior season, and he won't be playing in the bowl game either. So, how do you think that will affect Florida on playing any team from Oklahoma to Cincinnati?
I think it's immeasurable because Kyle Pitts, you can't just take away his statistics, which are remarkable, of course, but he just impacts the game planning on defense so much because Florida's got a really good wide receiver core. And what I'm impressed with Florida's wide receiver core is that they have a combination of guys to fill the slot, the outside, the more polished receivers, the burners. They have a variety of weapons there. But if you take away Kyle Pitts, then it takes away the number one option. And then a defensive coordinator's job is so much easier in either swinging coverage to the side of the field that they need to, or double teaming somebody, bringing a safety over the top. Doing all those things is incredibly more. Not that it's easy to defend Florida's offense without Kyle Pitts, but it's a huge impact. So Ben, I'm going to ask you to do one thing, and of course, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But if you would take Texas A&M's wins, and you would take Notre Dame's wins, and you would rank them, and you would order them. So Notre Dame start with Clemson, North Carolina, and then however you believe their wins should be ranked from 1 to 10, and put that next to Texas A&M from 1 to 8, and rank their wins from Florida on down. Auburn would be second, I believe. And I'm just curious as to what you may look at it a little bit differently when you do that.
I mean, so with Texas A&M, you're playing in the SEC, the best conference in college football.
We assume.
At least my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion. And so I would just tell you the truth, I don't know, because an all SEC schedule is, I feel like, harder than an all ACC schedule. And I mean, no offense again to any ACC fans out there, and this is not your fault, but ACC down here is known as the almost competitive conference. So I don't personally take maybe but 2 teams in that league seriously, in that conference seriously, other than Clemson and Notre Dame. FSU, they weren't good.
Okay, Notre Dame. Okay,
wow.
What you need to understand, though, Ben.
Back them up.
What you need to understand, though, is that not all ACC and all SEC schedules are built equally. That you don't play everyone. You don't play the entire schedule. So Texas A&M didn't play Ole Miss. They didn't play Georgia. They didn't play some of the better teams in the conference. So they only played 2 teams over 500 in the conference. They only beat 2 above 500 teams. Clemson's schedule is weighted down because they played Clemson, or Notre Dame's schedule is weighted down because they played Clemson twice. So I completely agree with you, number one, that the SEC is the best conference. And I don't think that's really debatable to a certain extent, although if we're looking at it objectively, we have no measurement of that this year, 0, because the conferences didn't play each other. I don't know if you were watching me at this time last year, but I would typically be spitting out a bunch of metrics and putting things into context to say Auburn beat Oregon, Alabama beat USC, this happened. The SEC's 13-6 against the Power 5. They're this, they're that, and we would be able to measure it against the Big Ten and the ACC and the other conferences and put it into context. This year, none of them played each other. 0. So we objectively we can't make that assumption. We can, you and I both think that the SEC is the best conference, and most people do, but there's nothing to verify that this year. Zero.
Mhm.
And also Notre Dame's schedule's weighted down by 2 games against Clemson and North Carolina.
Well, so I guess, I mean, now I look at it, North Carolina is ranked, of course. They're a ranked team. So I guess you stack it up. It's still, the win over Florida did mean a lot in the regular season. And as the season went on, it got better. But then after LSU, kind of lost its weight. And so I guess I would have to say that Notre Dame has a strength of record that was a better strength of record. But I just don't know after. I mean, I understand that, they were playing Clemson, but they got blown out. I mean,
they
got blown
played
out
them twice.
They weren't supposed to. And I watched the game. They just didn't look off. They just looked not off. I don't know how they looked. They just didn't look like the Notre Dame team that we saw last season. And I mean, if they continue to play like that, I don't see them do anything in the playoffs. But I still would have to say that the strength of record, if you want me to put those two side by side, I'd say Notre Dame. If I had to say which one has a better, strength of record, I would say Notre Dame, because they beat 2 ranked opponents over, I think, Texas A&M won against us. So yeah, I would say that Notre Dame had a better strength of record, but I mean, we'll have to see. Personally, I would put Texas A&M in, just because the way that, they've been inconsistent, yeah, but I just still would love to see them in. So that's my personal opinion. Obviously, no, Notre Dame versus them, I think Notre Dame comes out victorious. But I mean, you don't know, because Texas A&M won their game by an okay amount. It was Tennessee. I think they won by I want to say 21. It was 34-13, something like that.
Yes.
I want to say something like 11, 21, or 11 or 21 points. So, and then Notre Dame got blown out, I guess you could say, by Clemson by 3 touchdowns and a field goal. So I don't know if you're comparing those two talent, then you're comparing Tennessee to
that's
Clemson,
impossible.
Obviously, that's not a fair comparison.
And you're not comparing the schedule. You're comparing one game. You're blowing a regular season game out of proportion because it's the last game of the season. Do we want to evaluate Texas A&M by beating Vanderbilt, one of the worst teams in the country, by 5 points? They beat them 17-12. Do we want to evaluate Texas A&M by beating a 3-7 Arkansas team by 11 points, or struggling to score 20 points against LSU?
Yeah, I understand your argument there, and the more I think about it, the more Notre Dame sounds good. But I don't know what's going to happen. They're about to come on the ranking. The playoffs are about to be revealed. So
I will say this, Ben.
We'll have to see.
I will say this, Ben. I don't disagree with you. I'm just providing another look at it.
Yeah,
I'm not disagreeing with you. And also, what football would I rather see? I don't want to see Notre Dame play Clemson again. I do not want to see that game again. Would I rather see, just to see some new life, a little new blood, Texas A&M in the Final Four? Sure. And we'll let whomever's calling, please call back. Thanks for the call, Ben. I appreciate it. We'll kick back and watch to see how this gets revealed.
Press 1 to start the call, or 2 to decline. The call will start.
Playoff teams revealed next. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Okay. Take the next call. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Hello? Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline.
We're having all sorts of issues here.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to... The call will start at the beep.
There we go. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Elijah.
Hey, man. How's it going?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm good. What's up?
So my question was, with Ohio State only playing, I believe, 6 games this season, how do you think that's going to affect them during the selection process?
Well, if you look at what the committee's already told us, is that even after they only played 3 games, they ranked them 4th in the country. So they already put them in a position where they can't miss the playoffs. So I'm not saying that Ohio State, in this argument, I'm not saying that they deserve a playoff spot. I'm not saying that I don't understand the criticism against them because they only played 6 games instead of 9 like Texas A&M. But the committee's already placed them 4th. They were already 4th weeks ago and 4th last week. So for a team to be number 4 and then go out and beat the number 14 team in the country by 2 scores and win a Big Ten championship, there's no way that they can in any way justify lifting another team over them for a playoff spot, if you follow me. Like if Texas A&M would have been the team that beat Alabama yesterday at number 5 and beat number 1, well, then you could justify them leaping Ohio State. But there's nobody behind them that has a win that could justify leaping that far over them.
I got you.
And I'm just going by what the committee's ranking them. I didn't rank them that high until just the last couple of weeks myself.
Oh, yeah. Based on the 4 that are the top 4 right now, if one were to drop out, who do you think it would most likely be?
Well, Notre Dame.
Okay.
It depends on how they judged that loss yesterday.
Yeah.
I think it was worse than a 34-10 loss. If you watched the game, it was 31-3 in the third quarter, and Clemson just kind of waltzed through the rest of the game.
Yep. So at the end of it, who do you think is going to be the last day? Do you think it's going to be another Bama versus Clemson at the end, or?
Well, I think they're playing the best football, those 2 teams. I think Alabama's playing the best, even though they showed some chinks in the armor against Florida. They didn't look quite as good on defense as I expected them to, but they still were the better team, clearly. They're playing the best football. I think that they have been the best football team top to bottom the entire year, and Clemson has been, when they're at full strength, second. And Ohio State's just as talented as those 2, but they haven't played as many games and they haven't been as impressive. You could argue that at times Florida's played better than Ohio State and Oklahoma's played better in spots than Ohio State. But Ohio State's the 3rd best team, I believe, and would be the only team in the country that could give those other 2 teams a great game and a playoff game.
I got you. Well, it's pretty much all I had to ask. I appreciate it, man.
Hey, thanks for the call.
Yes,
Have
sir.
a good day. All right. Are we getting to these rankings here?
To decline. Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Davey Thomas H, buddy.
Hey, Tom.
I just flipped over to the college football rankings postseason.
Uh-huh.
So on that top shelf, can Notre Dame, can Clemson, can Ohio State with only 6 games. So the final 4 should be Alabama 11-0.
Yep.
Cincinnati 9-0.
Okay. Don't have a helmet for
Coastal
them.
Carolina 11-0. And the fourth one, I don't know.
You're strictly a wins and losses guy.
State. Say what?
You are strictly a wins and losses guy. You don't care who they played, how they looked.
It's just Ohio State is only 6-0.
I'm not talking about Ohio State. I'm not talking about Ohio State right now. I'm talking about you elevating Coastal Carolina and Cincinnati into the top 4 in the country.
They're in the AP top 25 of the FBS.
Oh, I follow along with what you're saying. If we're going to consider them, then why don't we take them seriously?
It's just Clemson was beaten by Notre Dame. So now Clemson beat Notre Dame yesterday. So Clemson and Notre Dame are both in with one loss.
They will be.
Ridiculous.
Clemson will be for sure. They're a conference champion. Here we go. Looks like it's coming down to it right now. They're releasing it right now. Here we go. Let's turn this up. Alabama's number 1. So
Right.
everybody can watch this together here. We've got Alabama at number 1, Navy Thomas. Let's see.
62 votes.
No. We're looking at the reveal right now. What you're looking at is old. Okay. Clemson,
Okay.
number 2. They're announcing them right now. Clemson's number 2. No shock yet. And Ohio State's going to be number 3, and Notre Dame's probably going to be number 4.
So they kicked out Cincinnati and they kicked out Coastal Carolina. Both undefeated teams.
Yep. They are.
Just like UCF did.
Just like UCF, correct. Ohio State's number 3.
I'll let you go with it. I'll let you go with it. I'll watch you as usual. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Appreciate it.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's MarkRogersTV. Who's on the line? Watching these selections together here, everyone. Who's going to be 4? Texas A&M, Notre Dame.
Because Ohio State was in the top 4 last week, you talked about it, they could win almost with a safety, it wouldn't have mattered. If they were going to move them, they would have moved them last week. And the fact that they won the Big Ten championship, I think everybody expected them to be where they are.
And I think also, I just think it was
So we got Clemson and Ohio State. That's going to be great, although I'm sick of watching the same teams play all the time. These 3 schools have ruled at this playoff since 2014. Alabama and Clemson for sure. Ohio State's always been on the 4 or 5 line, pretty much on the 4 or 5 line for this entire playoff era. All right, they're going to drag it out.
But it's justified. Absolutely justified. This is a football team that, from the very beginning, before they played a game, everyone thought they were a top 4 team, a top 5 team. They played one game, they're already under the AP rank. So the respect for this team has been there all along. They go 6-0. Of course, they wanted to play more games. So everyone wanted to see them play more games. That's not their fault. But they go 6-0, a Big Ten champion, beating a top 10 team in Indiana, now knocking off Northwestern.
Ohio State could have played a 7th game. They could have played the Illinois game. But what would that have done? What would that have told us? They would have beaten Illinois 45-10.
You've seen Justin Fields struggle mightily throwing the ball in their biggest games against Indiana, Northwestern.
Okay, they're dragging out number 4 here. What do you guys have for us?
300 yards rushing against Indiana, 400 against Northwestern.
Captain Genius, 2 ACC teams in the college football playoff would be a joke.
Key players on defense. I think winning the conference championship race, I think, was the tiebreaker for them in the committee's eyes.
I would just add, they haven't played their best game. They played a good half. They've not played 60 minutes yet. Now, I don't know if they're capable with trying to build that continuity in the next, whatever it is, 10, 15 days to get ready to play their best game, but they've not played their best.
Good question, Mr. Johnny D. Who would win head-to-head, Texas A&M or Notre Dame?
Also, some of it depends on when they tested positive, all of that. And now Ohio State's going
Start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
All right, who's ever on the line? We're waiting for number 4 here. Who do we have?
Hey, Mark. It's KB. How you doing?
Hey, KB. What's going on?
Hey, not much. Hey, I need to give a shout out to Ben really quick. I don't know who Ben is or how old Ben is, but man, that kid knows his stuff.
Yeah.
I like that kid himself. I don't know if his dad was feeding him lines on the other end or an earpiece or something.
Oh, I don't think so.
Man,
I can relate to that. I can relate to being 8 years old, writing NFL manuals and college football rankings and doing all that stuff. So Ben's near and dear to my heart. You are on the money.
Ben could create a little niche for himself and start a YouTube channel.
Sure.
And just talk college football.
I know.
You know, I'm telling you what. Hey Ben, props to you, man. If you're still listening, bud, you got some good insights and instincts on college football, man. Keep up the good work.
KB, let's not give him any ideas. He's going to run me right off of YouTube if we do that. We don't need that. Let him wait for a little while.
I gotcha.
What's on your mind today?
Well, I'll tell you this. A couple things just real quick. But like first, I think it should be Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame.
Okay.
I don't think Texas A&M belongs in the conversation at number 4. I really don't think any of the other teams do. Below that, I mean, I was watching the stream last night with is it Tommy Durkin? Is that his name?
Yeah, Bobby. Yep.
The Clemson guy and then the Notre Dame guy.
Yeah.
Y'all talked briefly about, you want like an 18 playoff. And I don't want to misrepresent what you think, but are you in favor of an 18 playoff?
Absolutely.
Now, are you not worried that that's going to diminish out of conference scheduling if that was the case?
So what are you telling me? That teams would go out there and create easier non-conference schedules so that they could make the playoff? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes. So basically you won't see anymore, if that was the case, an 18 playoff where the 5 conference champions and the 3 at large get in. You're basically decentralizing out of conference games. So
Seriously?
No more Oregon and Auburn, no more Texas and LSU.
Depends how you look at it.
USC, Alabama.
Depends how you look at it. You're either devaluing it or you are increasing the value of non-conference scheduling because you're going to have a committee select 3 at-large teams, and that's going to be largely based on strength of schedule and who they played.
But that would only apply to the 3 at-large. I mean, you can have the easiest schedule in the world if you're Clemson and not play South Carolina anymore, not play, Texas A&M or Baylor or whoever they have scheduled for the next 12 years already.
Yeah.
But there's no reason. All you're going to play is, these Division II or, Division I subdivision teams, like Citadel and Furman's and stuff like that. And
why does Clemson why does Clemson, Ohio State, Alabama, those 3 in particular, have any incentive to schedule anyone outside the conference? If Ohio State wins the Big Ten every year and they schedule nobody but a bunch of MAC schools outside the conference, a few people are going to complain about it, but the committee's always going to select them to be in the playoff. If they win the Big Ten and they have 1 loss or 0, they'll get selected.
Well, because all they have to do is win the conference championship.
I'm saying that exists right now. Ohio State had a game against Cincinnati last year and played no Power 5s outside the Big Ten, and nobody batted an eye, and they made the playoff.
Yeah, but when you're talking about like you're basically, what I think you're doing is you're making the lane for getting to the playoff smaller rather than broader, rather than leaving it open to where a Clemson could play, a Texas A&M or an LSU could play a Texas or Auburn, Oregon. You're shortening. You're basically forcing teams. I don't want to say subconsciously. I don't know if that's the right word, but you're basically saying, hey, this is how you get to the college football playoff. Win your conference. Okay. Well, then if all we have to do is win our conference, then we're gonna take the path of least resistance. And you see in college football, of all the sports, the path of least resistance is more prominent in college football than it is in anything else. You're going to take the path that gets you to the college football playoff, guaranteed, and that's going to be not scheduling any competitive opponents. You're going to just focus on your conference. You're going to be playing, a lot of, like we said, a lot of like Citadels and Wofford's and stuff. I really think that would hurt the sport. And yeah, you have those years where Ohio State didn't play anybody outside of, out of conference in the Power Five. But there are other years that Ohio State does. There are years that Michigan does, and Clemson always does. Those are fewer and far between than the years where they play absolutely nobody. So I don't know. I feel like that would really, really hurt the the out of conference schedule.
See, I see it completely opposite. But I understand what you're saying, I believe, but I see it completely different, that would incentivize teams to schedule. But if you want to go to 8 teams, let's say we go to 8 teams, and if you're putting it all on me, that's not the end of the story. That's not the end of the proposal. See, we would take scheduling completely out of the hands of the schools anyway. The schools should not be out there scheduling their own games. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because then you have a situation where in 2020, had the schedule been played the way it was supposed to be played originally, USC's killing themselves playing Notre Dame and Alabama in non-conference games, and Baylor hasn't played a ranked team outside the conference since 1995. They don't schedule anyone. The non-conference scheduling there's such a disparity, it's crazy. I would bring equity to the non-conference schedule, and that would be part of the whole proposal of the 8-team playoff.
Okay. Well, if that's the caveat to it, then that's something you can get on. I could definitely get on board with a little bit better. Because if you leave it up to teams, then yes, I feel that my theory is accurate. But if you're doing like what you say, where it's not up to the teams to schedule the out of conference opponents, and it's left to a higher, delegation at either at the conference level or the NCAA level, then that would make more sense. And I could probably get on board with you there. That would probably make more sense.
Yeah, I pretty much, and I'll have to cut another video on this because it's been a few years since I laid it out. I've basically built a scheduling system, both in conference and non-conference, that brings equity to the scheduling, so it's fair. So every team in the Power Five would play a composite 500 schedule, meaning the teams that they play outside the conference, if you added up their records from the previous season, would add up to 500, a 500 record. So everybody's playing. Now, you can't account perfectly. You can't forecast the future to account perfectly for who's going to improve, who's not, who's going to decline. And obviously, there's going to be a difference in scheduling when it's all played out. You can't predict the future, but at least you can start with an equitable schedule. And that goes for in-conference scheduling, too. The in-conference scheduling is pathetic as well. It's not fair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I agree with you there. Who do you have they announced the number 4 team yet?
Oh yeah, Notre Dame.
Okay. So it is Notre Dame.
They've got Notre Dame 4, Texas A&M 5, and Oklahoma 6.
All right, good deal. Well, I think that's the way it should be. I think Notre Dame should be 4. Absolutely. And I think that's a good. Honestly, I think that makes everybody happy. Obviously, if you're a Texas A&M fan, no, you're not. But this definitely could build to something really good. Not only is it, I think, fair to Notre Dame because they have the one loss to, I'm guessing Clemson's going to be probably number 2.
Yeah.
You have the one loss to them, but you also beat them earlier in the season. They've had a pretty not a tough schedule, but they've had a pretty good one. It's above middle of the road. They've had some quality wins, so I think Notre Dame definitely belongs at 4. They're going to play Bama, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
And if they were to upset Bama, then and Clemson was to be, I'm guessing Ohio State will probably be 3rd.
Yeah.
I don't know if they announced that yet, but the winner of Clemson, Ohio State, and the winner of Notre Dame and Bama, ESPN is going to be able to market that game if it's Notre Dame and Clemson again for a national championship. Oh my God, it's going to be the whole who's gonna win out of 3, best out of 3 type of deal. Like they're gonna market that game. That'll be a good game if that's the case. But I think that's fair. I'm glad Notre Dame's at 4.
Yeah, I think that if Notre Dame would have won a close game or lost a close game against Clemson and finished number 3, then people would be, including myself, not wanting to see Clemson and Notre Dame play again. But
No.
in this situation,
not,
at least
not in the first round of the playoffs.
exactly, if Notre Dame plays Clemson, they will have earned it, obviously, by beating Alabama. So I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take some other calls.
Yeah.
I appreciate the call.
Okay, bud. Thanks, Mark Rogers. Pretty good.
Have a good one. Oh, and we lost our calls. Here we go. 305 on the line. Good to see everybody on the line here today talking up the playoff bids.
The call will
I
start at the
probably should have recorded this so I could watch it back later. Not that it matters what these guys say. It only matters what those 13 people say in the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Brandon.
Hey, Brandon.
Lifelong Clemson fan.
I'm sorry, what's that? Hey, Brandon.
This is Brandon.
Yeah, what's up?
Clemson fan. Hey, I wanted to ask you, do you live in Palm Coast, Florida?
I don't.
Oh, okay. I was delivering mail, and you said you got a package at your door right when I delivered the package, so I thought I'd deliver it to you.
No. No, I've never lived
But
in
anyway,
Florida.
I wanted to get to the Clemson-Notre Dame game. I was a little shocked. Clemson, they really controlled the line of scrimmage. I was kind of shocked by that. But for all the Texas A&M fans out there, I know they're pretty mad, but I think there's two teams in college football that you would never want to play twice, and that's Alabama and Clemson. Especially because Clemson, their assistants are incredible. Brent Venables had a very, very good game plan. Ian Book was confused. And it's hard to beat a team twice. And I was just shocked by how Clemson really just dominated the line of scrimmage. And also, Notre Dame is a very good physical team. And I don't know if you noticed, but they're very good open field. They can tackle real well in the open field. So I just think all the cards fell that, Clemson was going to win that game. I don't think a lot of people saw it as bad as this, but I feel like Notre Dame is the 4th best team. And I've already seen Texas A&M and Alabama. Why don't we just give Notre Dame a shot, which they did, but yeah.
Yeah, could you imagine if this was an Alabama-Texas A&M 1-4 game? I think Texas A&M might be able to play them a little bit better, but Kellen Mond is so inconsistent, it would depend on which quarterback showed up as to whether they would have any kind of chance.
Right. And I think Ian Book is way better. I think he's a much improved quarterback this year. I was really impressed with him the first game, but again, Brent Venables just had a perfect game plan to win that game, and that's the defensive coordinator. I mean, that whole team. They said after the game, they were inconsolable. They didn't want to. They've never been defeated like that. They were getting in Trevor Lawrence's face, so. I think it's just all the cards fell that Notre Dame was just going to, lose that game.
Yeah, and I think when it's a rematch situation, and especially considering Clemson's defense of the ACC, knowing that they had to win to make the playoff, where Notre Dame, not that there was an incentive to win the ACC and secure a playoff spot for sure, but Clemson knew they had to win to make the playoffs. And I just think that there is just a level of pride in that program and in that team that has been built up over the last 5 or 6 years, and even beyond that they just played with a chip on their shoulder, and they were laser focused to get it done yesterday.
Right. And the last thing I wanted to say is I'm hoping Clemson gets Ngata back, but I don't know. I don't know if he's coming back or not, but I did see Frank Ladson play a couple plays. But hopefully they can get fully healthy on the receiver side, because they definitely need some outside threats. I think DJ Williams had a really good game last night, but I think Ngata is Dabo said he's the best receiver in that room, so we need to get him healthy.
Yeah, as you well know, against Ohio State last year, their outside receivers didn't do much, and they went to Travis Etienne as a receiver in the fourth quarter. Obviously, he couldn't run from the running back position against Ohio State. And then Trevor Lawrence became a threat on the ground, and it's kind of unconventional the way they figured things out and adjusted to beat Ohio State, but they got it done.
Right. I mean, that's going to be a good game. I mean, I'm kind of skeptical on Ohio State right now. I mean, they didn't really look good. I knew they were missing a lot of guys, but they just didn't really look. I mean, I knew that during that game, there's just something wrong with Justin Fields. He just doesn't look, the past couple of games, he just hasn't really looked himself.
Well,
especially that Indiana game.
I would say three things about yesterday's game. Number one, he apparently has a sprained thumb. Number two,
right.
He the Northwestern, they were dialing up all sorts of exotic blitz packages, and the offensive line, for as well as they run blocked, did not protect him that well most of the time. He was under fire most of the time. And also, Northwestern's got an excellent secondary, and Fields was missing his best receiver.
Right, Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Well, Julian Fleming was supposed to go to. I really wanted him to go to Clemson, but he kind of looked lost out there a little bit. He looked like a true freshman.
Yep, he did.
He ran the wrong route a couple times.
Yep.
I was kind of disappointed with how he's been performing this year. He's been a little bit underperforming, and I was kind of shocked because I know he's very highly touted.
Yeah, they can't have anybody out there running wrong routes against Clemson. We know what happened last time, so
right.
Pretty much ended the game.
Nolan Turner pick. And that's another thing. That's another big one is Nolan Turner, that targeting. I mean, that's tough. That's real tough. He's going to be out for the first half.
Oh, I didn't see that. That obviously happened in the second half. So once it got to like 31-3, I started, I was in on other games at that point.
Yeah, it happened in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
Yeah. But all right, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Hey, yeah, have a good day.
You too.
All right. Well, the way the rest of the show goes on ESPN, I don't know. Do they start talking about the bowl selections? When do those come out? Let's see what their programming schedule looks like. Don't they have a bowl selection show coming up in about rankings, reaction, all this other business? I don't know. It's coming out at some point.
1 to start the call or 2 to decline. Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
I always love when Reese Davis hits up the selection share with what held certain teams back, and then they always state, well, they're an excellent team, and we really respect them, and all of that, and then it kind of falls apart from there. MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Well, voice of college football, Mark Rogers. It's been quite an interesting day here.
I guess.
Kind of landed the way I thought. It would land.
Exactly.
I'm not overly surprised. I do think that. By the way, did you see that line on Notre Dame, Alabama?
Oh my goodness! Well, that's what the line was against Florida. So.
Well, it leads me to the question: is that the biggest line we've had in a semifinal game so far? That's bigger than when Alabama, let's say, played Washington.
It wasn't 17.
Okay.
It wasn't 17 against Michigan State. I don't think we've had a line that, those lines were like 12 or 13.
Right.
Yeah, that has to be the biggest line.
Yeah, I thought it would be high, but I thought it might be closer to that 15, 16, 14. Not to say that that's still not high, but 17 seems a little high, but that one's going to be interesting. I just have to say, and I want to get this out here, I mentioned it again last night, and there's a lot of talk in the chat, so I want to kind of go over this again. It's kind of a two-part thing.
Okay.
Because I hear a lot of people in the chat saying, well, Ohio State only beat Indiana by 7. And then when they struggle to beat Northwestern.
Okay.
Is it one of two things? Is it the fact that Ohio State only played 6 games? Or if Ohio State would have won those 6 games 42-0, would that have been good enough for you? Because you can't have it both ways. Just tell me one or the other. Okay? So is it that those 2 games were just too close for comfort for you? And if they'd have done 42-0, over the 6 games, that would have been good enough for you? Or is it just the 6 games? Now, the second part that I want to pose, and I've posted this in the chat a couple times, and this goes out to my SEC people, to my ACC people, to my Clemson fans, to my Alabama fans. The bottom line, if the ACC and the SEC presidents, and you notice I say presidents because they don't want me to blame Kevin Warren, so let me just blame the presidents. If the SEC and the ACC presidents started their college football seasons in late October, and Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban's teams were 6-0 with an ACC championship and an SEC championship, Dabo Swinney and Nick Saban would be on ESPN every day, saying that my team should be in the playoff. Please tell me where I'm wrong with that analysis, Mark Rogers.
Well, absolutely they would. Absolutely they would. Dabo Swinney especially, anytime he has had any kind of an angle on his team being disrespected or the ACC, it's funny how he wavers between picks his spots where he believes he can include the ACC in his argument, and then other times he kind of dismisses the ACC and just says, hey, we can't be responsible for the rest of the conference, and kind of stands on his argument for his own program. Absolutely. If Alabama's 6-0 right now, or Clemson 6-0, yes, they are stating that they are clearly one of the 4 best teams. It's obvious. They can only do what they can do. And yes, there is no question.
Yeah, I just think, Mark, that, I mean, you could always do this, where you could flip the argument and put the other folks in your position and just say, what would they be doing in this instance? Now, I mean, as I said to you last night, I mean, I think that the committee, and you'd have to be blind to not understand that the world that we're living in this year. As I said, there's a reason that businesses are getting shut down and people are wearing face diapers, especially coaches right now. I mean, we're not living in a normal world. So, I mean, you can ignore that and just say, well, you played 6 games, you played 6 games. As I say, there is a reasoning behind the fact that you're not playing more games. I mean, we got here somehow, and that, you can look at that just in a vacuum, or you could examine it and you could take a look at the reasoning why. So, I mean, things happen in this world for reasons, and that's how we got here. But
and Dave, your question outlines a lack of, whether it be thought or journalistic integrity, or do we use the term balls or guts? I've never heard the follow-up question, and I've been out of the arena for close to 20 years to be in these news conferences, ask these coaches these questions, but exactly the question that you're asking to Dabo Swinney or to a Jimbo Fisher, to say, okay, if you were in the situation of a Ryan Day at Ohio State and your team had played a 6-0 schedule and were the conference champion and had beaten 2 top 15 teams, what would be your stance on your team's eligibility and argument for a playoff spot?
Right. Well, I mean, what the coach is there for is to fight for his players and fight for his team. I get that. Otherwise, any coach with their soul is out there to politic for their football team.
And I understand Jimbo campaigning because of the situation his team's in, but why Dabo's campaigning, I have no idea.
Yeah, that's what irks me. I mean, it's like, he has these moments, Mark, where he does statements to tweak people or to get a rise out of people. This is why I was going, and I mentioned it to Pete, where he was doing the Roy bus with me a couple of years ago. The rest of y'all, I don't know if you remember that a little bit. And, basically saying we're poor Clemson this, poor Clemson that. So, I mean, he plays these games to, I think, get a rise out of people to, he knows it's going to get out there. He knows that the media world that we live in is going to get out there and it's going to get played all the time. But that's his shtick. That's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
He can't have it both ways. You can't build a mega power in college football and be disrespected. You can't be a 2-point favorite against Ohio State last year and talk about how you're disrespected and everybody thinks Ohio State's going to win and they're Ohio State. We're just little old Clemson. No, you're a 2-point favorite and not everybody thinks you're going to lose.
For sure. Yeah, you're not going to be on the national stage for this long and then everybody just ignore you. It don't work that way. Once you've built up a body of work over 6 years, people are we've got cable television nowadays, folks. People are going to take notice. They just are.
And when you play in a bad conference and your conference is losing all its non-conference games like they did last year, people are going to criticize your conference. Is it your fault? No, it's not your fault. But don't try to defend your conference with a lot of hyperbole that doesn't exist, that's not based in fact and reality.
Sure. Yeah, it's tough to defend 7-5 and 8-4 football teams.
And 5-19 and 5-19 against the other four conferences. That's what's not easy to defend, and that's not his. It's not his job.
Sure. And I'd be the first to tell you, we've had the conversation about the Big Ten this year being down. And I agree. I think that the Big Ten this year has not been in a great place. I don't think it's as good as it was, let's say, last year, 18, certainly as it was in 16, 17, when I think it was as strong as any conference in college football.
I don't know.
But, what's that?
We've had this conversation before, so I'll let you continue. I don't know. I want to see him play bowl games. I want to see him play other conferences. I don't know that the Big Ten's down. They haven't played anybody. There aren't any games. They have a 500 record. They have the same record they would have as they did in 2016.
See, I think there's something. Well, here's where I'm going with that, Mark. I think you know where I'm going with that. There's something to your top dog programs playing at a high level helps your conference. That's where I was going with that.
Well, you can have different. Yeah, but you can have different high-level teams emerge at different times. Yes, I understand. Michigan and Penn State are supposed to be good, and they're not good. So your argument makes sense, and I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I don't have any proof.
Right, and maybe this year we just, we subtracted Penn State, and then Indiana just took Penn State's place as the other, let's say, top 12 team. And if it was Penn State versus Indiana, people would step up and say, it's just, people just don't think of Indiana as good as football. So, basically placing them as a top 12 team, it's just a foreign concept for them, I think.
Exactly. If Iowa, Northwestern, and Indiana's performance this year would have been replaced by the names Michigan, Penn State, and Wisconsin, then everybody would be fine with it.
Sure, yeah.
Hey, Dave, I'm going to take this call. Thanks so much. We keep getting tons of calls here, so I apologize to Dave for cutting him off there, but we've got all sorts of people calling. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Please turn down your audio in the background there.
This is GT Mark.
Hey, man, what's up?
Oh, I was calling with the college football playoff solution.
Oh, give it to me.
All right, you take the top 12 teams. You give teams ranked number 1, 2, 3, and 4 a first round bye. Then you seed 5 through 12. 5 playing 12, 6 playing 11, 7 playing 10, 8 playing 9. All right, 5, 6, 7, and 8 gets a home game. Then you reseed those 4 winners against numbers 1 through 4. They get a home game. Then you just proceed with it is now. You take those 4 winners, put them in 2 games and bowl games, and then you proceed with the championship game as they do now. With 12 teams in, nobody can complain.
Okay, I'll complain.
That's the way the major leagues do it in baseball. That's the way NFL does it.
That's a completely different deal. Here's the problem.
That's the way the other divisions of the college sports do it.
I appreciate your effort in putting this together because I like where you're headed with your thought, but I've got a few problems with it. Okay, my first question is, who decides who these 12 teams are?
We already have a ranking committee, like them or not.
Okay, so we're going to trust this ranking committee.
You could base it on a criteria of A, B, and C on your record. That would be my preference. I think they're always going to defer, though, to a ranking committee.
Okay. All right. I'm not necessarily completely in favor of that. I do think that there needs to be some kind of selection committee involved. But you understand that in Major League Baseball and the NFL, there's an objective. You don't need to have a committee. We don't have any committee selecting what teams make the playoffs. There's a rule structure, guideline structure, and you need to win games and win divisions and make wild card spots based on your record. It's all based on what happens on the field. Nobody can argue with the NFL or the Major League Baseball playoffs or the NBA playoffs because it's all about what you did on the field and the results of the games on the field. In this sport, it depends on how you impressed 13 people in a room. And so you're just kind of extending that. So what I like is you've extended it, but I think it's still too dependent on these people selecting it.
I would be all in favor of the 12 teams being selected by their record and their play on the field.
Well, the problem
that would be ideal.
The problem is that we all see their play on the field differently. Even right now, we have people in the chat that say Notre Dame should be 4. Other people say Texas A&M should be 4. Other people say Cincinnati should be 4. And this happens every year. So I like where you're headed with that. My only other issue, so I'll bypass that because we could be sitting here going through that for hours. But the other thing I don't like about it, I don't like buys for a few different reasons. Who determines who the top 4 teams in the country are? Because if we would have had buys, so basically, sir, I could go through every year of college football, starting with 2019 and going back, and it would be impossible to distinguish what 4 teams earned buys. So in the NFL, there's a system that determines who earned the bye that makes sense based on their play on the field and the results on the field. We wouldn't be able to determine 4 clear teams that deserved buys based on their play on the field and the results on the field. And that would be a huge advantage. Number one, they get a bye. They don't have to play. So there's no chance of them losing the first game. So you've given them an automatic entry into the second round. Number two, they're going to play in the second round a team that had to fight through one of the best teams in the country, may have gotten injured and beat up in that, while the other team gets to sit and strategize and game plan for them for 2 weeks. That's a huge advantage that I don't think is earned by those 4 teams. Why wouldn't you just extend it to 16 and nobody's got to buy?
I would vote for that, but I don't think they're going to get rid of this committee format that they have. They're going back to the BCS. They had a selection committee. They have a selection committee now. That it would be better if they set up a specific and exact criteria for these top 12 teams. Being in the top 4, you have to get some kind of gravy for finishing in the top 4 by whatever ranking system you use. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that one of your lower ranked teams, even though they are playing one extra game, could win. It's happened. We've had wild card teams win the Super Bowl, and they played an extra game than the team they beat in the Super Bowl.
Yep. Yeah, it happens.
But if you get the top 12 teams in, that should pretty much say, you have to make the top 12.
Yeah, there would be nobody legit that could complain about that. If you're going to go 12 deep.
Texas A&M would be in, Florida would be in, Cincinnati would be in.
Yep. We get Indiana in there. We get all sorts of teams in there.
And I just think that would be the solution. That you reward teams for their play on the field for being one of the 4 best teams in college football.
Well,
there has to be a reward system for your play on the field when it comes to seeding the playoffs.
Yeah, that's where it gets sticky and it gets to be a problem. So, sir, I'm going to take your format, and as soon as I finish this statement, I'm going to take some other calls, but I'm going to take your format and I'm going to split it in half, not because I like it, but because this gets served up to me all the time. People want a 16 playoff and they want 2 byes. And the reason I keep telling people that that doesn't work is that we could go year by year by year by year, and there's no way to determine what teams should get those 2 byes. It's not clear cut and it's unfair. So, for example, last year, LSU, Clemson, and Ohio State all went undefeated. They were all 13-0, all conference champions. Who should get the 2 byes? And those 2 teams would have a huge advantage over the third team. But out of those 3, it's impossible to distinguish who earned the byes. And the same thing would hold true with your system. It would be impossible to distinguish what 4 teams clearly earned those byes. It's not the NFL, and they don't play all the same schedule. The NFL works because everybody plays a very like schedule. In college football, I would build a schedule that would bring us more toward an NFL type schedule. People don't like to hear the NFL and college football mix, but this is where it works, is you need to take the scheduling out of the school's hands and put it in the hands of a not even a committee, a guideline. And my guideline, my number 1 point would be everyone would play a 500 composite non-conference schedule from the previous season, meaning everybody would play an equitable non-conference schedule and a conference schedule. Even the conference schedules are screwed up now and need to be fixed. But I appreciate the call, sir.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much. So we got a 12-game playoff, or a 12-team playoff, 12-team playoff proposed there. I'm going to take this call, but I got to get to the super chat and comment on the screen here from Jesse.
Call or 2 to decline. Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
So caller, please hang on here for a second. Got to answer this question from Jesse. And Jesse, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Yo, Mark, what do you think about my dogs and who we will play and what bowl game we're in? Okay, what I think about your dogs is that they've got a tremendous, tremendous roster of talent that was even more stockpiled in 2021 just in this National Signing Day on Wednesday. You have a tremendous team that should be able to compete with anybody in the country. Kirby Smart, maybe it's not necessarily a topic that I can go into right now, but have many times in the past, I believe botched the quarterback situation and selection of quarterbacks. But they finally arrived at JT Daniels. Do I believe that JT Daniels is a savior, is the next Joe Burrow? We have not seen enough against quality competition to know that. But is he the best and most capable quarterback and even more experienced with 14 games, 15 games of starts under his belt in big-time competition? Yes. So JT Daniels and Georgia might be a better play in this playoff than Notre Dame. Who they should play in a bowl game? I would love to see Georgia play Oklahoma. I would love to see Georgia play, if I could see Georgia play anybody that's not going to be participating in the playoffs, I would love to see them play Oklahoma. That would be an interesting game for me. All right, caller, who's on the line?
Jeez.
There he is.
I'm getting to a point with college football where I read a book last year by a guy by the name of Brian Chewy.
Okay.
It was titled "The Fix Is In." Fixing in major league sports. It's covered the NFL, NHL, NASCAR, MLB, NBA, and NCAA.
Okay.
And what I got from the summary of that book is look at every game in sports with a business sense, right? In that book, it discussed that the FBI from 1960 to 1984, they were investigating fixings in boxing, the NFL, NCAA,
and MLB. They were investigating those for fixing of fights, fixing of games, and rigging of certain games.
Sure.
In that book, it discussed the Muhammad Ali fight where one of the opponents that he faced had a trainer come to this agent and say, we're going to throw the fight. This is exactly how Muhammad Ali's going to win it, exactly in that order they won. Muhammad Ali won. But what I'm getting at is the FBI eventually shut down that investigation because it was literally becoming every single game in the NFL, NCAA, MLB, and boxing were fixed. It got to that point.
Chase, I'm curious as to whether that was the second Sonny Liston fight. Do you remember that? Was that the second? Yeah, the one where people at the fight didn't even think that Cassius Clay even connected with Sonny Liston, and he took a dive with like 15 seconds into the fight. So go ahead.
What I'm getting at is with the playoff system that we have and the 13 people, I am in a strong belief that these 13 people are fixing college football games to make it to where every single year it's the same 4 or 5 teams rotating into the playoffs. Those teams being Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and a toss-up between Georgia and Oklahoma each and every year.
Yeah.
I'm in a strong belief that this committee is fixing college games to make it to where it's the same 4 teams. And if you look at it, and from after reading that book, I've and this guy Brian too, he's been on the Dan Patrick Show. He's been through talking about sports gambling and how that's in relation to fixing of games, and how our sports are no different than FIFA in the sense of fixing games. I'm in a strong belief that the NCAA and this playoff committee has been fixing games since the playoff committee has been put together. That they're actively fixing and rigging games to make it to where it's the same 4 or 5 teams getting in the playoffs and getting out. For instance, in that Alabama game last night, I saw within about 4 or 5 different occasions where it seemed like Trask was throwing the game purposefully. Missing passes that he connected on all season, where he just seemed like he purposefully overthrew it, purposefully fumbled the ball, purposefully did something that just was way out of the ordinary. I believe that game was fixed to where Alabama could get in and continue this pattern of the same 4 or 5 teams. I'm in a strong belief that college football is fixed, the NFL is fixed, NASCAR is fixed, the NHL is fixed, and the MLB is fixed. That they fix it for certain teams.
Well, I would think that if MLB was fixed, they would certainly want a Yankees-Dodgers World Series, and we haven't seen that in almost 40 years. But getting back to college football, I don't know what your incentive to watch the games would be if you think this is all fixed. Why would you want, like if I thought this was all fixed, I'd shut down my YouTube channel tomorrow. I'd be done.
I watch them to simply gather evidence. I watch them to gather evidence and to stockpile evidence to prove my point.
Okay.
To prove it that it's fixed. And you know, that book, it was a great book to read, and it essentially went in and said in modern sports with social media that these committees and these people look at which teams are most commonly mentioned. What are the most commonly mentioned teams on social media in college football? What are the 4 or 5 most commonly mentioned?
I would think the teams that we just talked about, Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, Oklahoma, Notre Dame.
Yep. And notice how ever since the playoffs have been put together, They always seem to find their way in. Always.
Well,
and there's been a few years where Alabama snuck in without a conference title.
once, yes. Well, but Chase, you would have to explain to me Clemson, because before this playoff started, and specifically in 2015, Clemson was not a factor at the highest levels of college football. Before 2015.
Well, now they are.
Well, now they are.
Now they are.
But there was no, like Ohio State, like if Michigan suddenly became a factor, and I could play into your conspiracy theory because Michigan brings a lot of eyeballs and they're a blue blood program and they've got a huge brand and a national program. But that wasn't Clemson 10 years ago. So I don't know what the incentive was to prop up Clemson and make sure to fix games to get them into the playoff. I could buy that for Alabama. I could buy that for Notre Dame. I could buy that for Ohio State. I couldn't necessarily buy that for Clemson because they were never that team.
Well, that started in 2016 when they made it in. And then everybody started talking about them. Then they started making sure they got in.
So they started fixing the Clemson games after they got good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
To make sure they can always get in. Because, I mean, there's been games that I've seen where latent fixing has been an occurrence. Like that Tua Tagovailoa second half comeback against Georgia. I watched a video and there was blatant cheating going on by Alabama in that game that would have cost them that national championship. I'm a Florida fan and I'm saying that. It would have cost them that national championship because they pushed the guy to the ground. They were illegally blocking people in the back. They were cheating that whole game, a whole second half of that game.
All right, Chase.
I mean,
we're going to give.
Cheating.
Gotcha. We're going to give some time to other callers that have been calling in, but I appreciate the call.
All right.
Thanks, Chase.
Press 1 to start the call or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? All right. Nobody's on the line. Alfred the Savage. Ohio State is average at best. I don't know what that means. Average. So they're 65th in the country. There's 130 teams. They're average. Greg, as an Aggie fan, just give us Oklahoma after getting screwed from the playoff. And if I were a Texas A&M fan, I would certainly not feel good about what was selected today. I think there's an argument for Texas A&M, but I think Notre Dame's argument is better, but not by a lot. There's an argument, but if you look at Notre Dame's strength of schedule and their results top to bottom, they're just stronger than Texas A&M. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Brad Nickens.
Hey, what's going on?
So after the Florida-Alabama game, do you think that would be one of the better games played by both sides, I'd say?
Well, I thought Alabama had fixed its defensive issues more so than I saw against Florida, especially considering I cannot think of a team in modern college football that's as one-dimensional as Florida, but as prolific and productive as they are. You would think that teams would be better at defending Florida's passing game, knowing that they can't run, but they continue to put up big points and yardage against everybody. So I did think that Alabama's defense would play a little bit better. I said 45-31. But did they both play their best? It was a great game, a high-intensity game. I was impressed with the way Florida bounced back from the LSU game, and especially the way they bounced back from continually making defensive third down mistakes, mostly penalties, that converted third downs into first downs for Alabama, and how they mismanaged the clock at the end of the first half to give Alabama a shot to score that last touchdown. That even despite all those issues, going in 18 points down at halftime, that they made it a game. So I was impressed with Florida. I'm just flat out impressed with Alabama because I think they're the best team in the country. So I don't even think they played their best, but they're the best team in the country.
Right. We'll actually follow up to this. Do you think this matchup between Alabama and Florida would probably be one of the best matchups this season overall? I'm talking about including the playoffs. I know it's just projection.
Sure. Do I think Notre Dame's going to give Alabama as good a game as Florida did last night? No. And was that game last night one of the better games I've seen this year? Yeah, it's in the top 10.
All right. Well, thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Have a good day. All right. Appreciate all the kind comments. Want to remind everyone that you can help support Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. I resigned from my job 2 months ago. This is the venture. This is all of it right here. Many of you know my story, my past, 19 years at ESPN. So this is what we're doing now. Full-time, full throttle all the time, even though it felt like it was full throttle, full-time all the time when I had a full-time job because I was putting like 50 hours a week into this as well. So this is the venture. So you can help us build the vision, catch the vision right here, contribute in a number of ways. Smash that like button for sure. Leave your comments, Cash App, Venmo, PayPal. Also join us on Patreon. It's 15 cents a day on Patreon, $5 a month. And you get an insider look to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, my predictions. You get Steve Merrill, Pro Sports Info's betting advice. And you get watch parties and exclusive live streams per request. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
There he is. How's it going?
I'm doing okay. I mean, I just want to get right into it. Ohio State should not be in the college football playoff. Not because I'm not one of the top 4 teams, because they have not played enough games. I think the Big Ten and the Pac-12 should have been eliminated this year from the college football playoff because they did not play 8 games. I think there needs to be a threshold. I thought they should have had a threshold of 8 games to get into the college football playoffs.
Why 8?
In general, every year.
What's magical about 8?
I just feel like 8 games is enough of a slate to go ahead and judge a team that they're good or not.
Why 8? So if we had a team this year that played 7 games and they played the toughest schedule in college football in those 7 games and they beat everyone 50-0, you would eliminate them. You would just 8.
Yep.
It has to be 8.
Yep.
Not 7, 8, not 9.
Yep.
Why not 9? Let's make it 9. Let's go 9, McD. It has to be 9.
I don't think it should be 9. I think it should be 8.
Oh, it should be 8. Okay. Since McD said it was 8, it's got to be 8. Not 7, not 9. 8. Okay. All right. Point number 2.
I just feel like that's, in my opinion, that's enough of a comfortable slate.
Okay. 8.
For me to touch a team.
Just feels right.
Ohio State played the 67th easiest schedule in the college compared to Texas A&M.
Okay.
Texas A&M should have been over Ohio State, in my opinion.
Okay.
I mean, Ohio State, they beat Indiana and Northwestern. I mean, those are no offense to those teams, but I mean, those teams don't compare talent-wise to a Michigan, even to a Maryland. So overall, I do think that Ohio State. I just don't think they should be in. I really don't.
That Northwestern team. Wait a minute. The Northwestern team that beat Maryland 43-3 doesn't compare to Maryland.
No, they do. They compare to Maryland. I'm just saying. I don't feel comfortable with a team only playing 6 games with the 67th easiest schedule in the college football playoffs when you have a 9-1 team out of the SEC. I know this year's crazy and it's an anomaly and this will probably never happen again. But I just don't feel comfortable with it personally.
I think we should all understand, McD, that the strength of schedule metric means less this year than ever.
That is true.
Nobody played each other.
That is true.
We don't know how good the Big Ten is. everybody says the Big Ten's down because Michigan and Penn State are down, but somebody had to win the games in the Big Ten. I can guarantee everybody this. The Big Ten has the exact same record this year than it did last year, than the year before, than they did in 1950. You know why? Because it's 500.
500. Yep.
So we don't know. When the Big Ten goes out, and every other conference, fill in the blank, goes out and plays bowl games, I'm going to be intrigued to see who wins the bowl games. Then I'm going to be able to tell you, and we'll be able to all look at it more objectively in context to say, okay, maybe this conference is a little bit better than we thought, or maybe this conference isn't as good as we thought. The only conference that showed us anything was the Big 12, losing to the Sun Belt.
Well, my next note was going to be on the Sun Belt.
All right.
Coastal Carolina is a better team than Cincinnati. Coastal Carolina should be getting in over Cincinnati, in my opinion. Coastal Carolina has wins over Power 5 schools unlike Cincinnati. They rank 2.
But you also know that not all Power 5 teams are better than all Group of 5 teams. If we listed 1 through 130, all the teams in FBS, it's not like it's all the Power 5, 75 teams, and then the number 76 team is a Group of 5 team. There's a big overlap there. So just because Coastal Carolina beat Kansas, who is beyond awful, and it's a Power 5 win, I can't credit that over Cincinnati beating Tulsa, Memphis, Houston, Army, Tulsa, SMU.
Coastal Carolina also beat BYU.
They beat BYU. Yep. How good's BYU? Who knows? Because they didn't play anybody. They really didn't play anybody.
One lost team. They beat everybody on the schedule, Coastal Carolina, and if that Sun Belt Championship game didn't get canceled, they will beat Louisiana for a second time. So I think personally I think they're better than Cincinnati personally.
Oh, I'm not saying that you're wrong. I don't know. I think it's a toss-up. I would not go on any great campaign to say Coastal Carolina is better than Cincinnati or Cincinnati's better than Coastal Carolina. I don't know. I think it's a toss-up.
That's the second point I want to make. And my third point is I agree the 8-team playoff. I know the conversation comes every year. Usually I was at 4, then I was at 6, and then I sat down and thought about it. There needs to be a whole revamp of college football. And I'll get into this a few more in the off season because I'm sure you have other callers going in. But there needs to be a whole revamp of the 8-team playoff. And I kind of alluded to it earlier, but you have 6 automatic bids for conference championships. And then you have a 7th spot that is either a group of 5 or independent. And then your 8th spot is a wild card. And basically you pick those 8 teams and then you see them 1 through 8. It's uniform, and I think it's the best route to go. And also you get to add an extra game to the season, a 13-game schedule under my scenario. So more college football for everybody. But that's all I got for you, Mark. My Terps aren't going to be in a bowl game, it looks like. We only got 5 games. We went 2 and 3. You should have played 8. Third in the Big Ten East, which is a proof of from last year. But overall, I think we do make a bowl game next year. I do. So, and I do think we play all 12 games next year as well. So
did I hear this right, McD? Did I hear this right, McD? You've come around to my 8-team playoff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, man. I always appreciate the call.
Okay.
Have a good one.
Thanks for the call, Mark.
Of course. Our man McD been arguing with me for years about a 16 playoff. Come around to 8. All right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line? Oh, they hung up. We got another one coming in.
The call or 2 to decline.
There we go.
Press 1 to start the call or 2. The call will start at the beep.
It's the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, it's Bash.
Hey, Bash. What's up?
Hey, so McD was talking about how Texas A&M's schedule is a lot tougher.
Yeah.
Mark, And I know, again, this step to me doesn't matter too much because, again, SEC play conference only, Big Ten play conference only. But here's a stat for you. The combined record of the teams that Texas A&M had beaten this year is a combined 25-45.
Yep.
Ohio State.
I ran those numbers last night. Yep. I know. I wish I could find. I did a comparison, not to cut you off, Bash, but last night when I was doing my top 25, I wanted to do my due diligence, and I did a comparison. I lined up Cincinnati, Oklahoma, Notre Dame, and Texas A&M, and I ranked their wins, 1 through whatever, for that particular team. And Texas A&M, for Jimbo Fisher going off and on and on about what a tough schedule they played. They beat Florida. They beat Auburn. They didn't beat another team with a 500 record. Above 500 record.
Like, where's this notion? I would argue that Notre Dame's third best win against Boston College is comparable to Texas A&M's second best win against Auburn.
Yeah, or their fourth best win against Pitt.
Yeah. So I never really understood the Texas A&M argument like this when they're had on our one losses against that number one team down the road in Alabama. No, like that's not how we should be selecting the top 25 or the top 4. The thing that I really like about Notre Dame being in the playoff, and don't get me wrong, I would prefer a couple other teams over Notre Dame, but at least you can hang your hat on Notre Dame's wins. You can't do that nearly as much with Texas A&M. They have Florida. You don't want to discredit that. But Notre Dame beat North Carolina by multiple scores, and they beat Clemson. Even if that loss that they have, they also had a win against that team that they lost to. Even if it's not the same team, you still went out there and beat a Clemson team that was number 1 in the country and is currently number 2 in the country. That should be valued, and the playoff committee valued that.
I think it's reasonable to think that Clemson, with the personnel losses they had in the game in South Bend, was still probably the 5th or 6th best team in the country.
Yeah, and quite honestly, like I just felt like Clemson was played more so with a chip on their shoulder, and Notre Dame was a little bit just like shocked. I mean, look, Brian Kelly has to silence everybody and prepare better. I don't care if he loses this game against Alabama. He needs to make it competitive because he has a problem with these postseason games, these big-time games, of losing them and losing them embarrassingly bad. I mean, the game against Ohio State in the 2016 Fiesta Bowl, that was not close. And neither was the playoff game in 2018 against Clemson. And neither was the ACC championship here in 2020. And, we got to see what they do against Alabama. I think they match up decently well as anybody can really match up with Alabama's offense. But I got to tell you, man, it's a lot of pressure for Brian Kelly to be on. If he can't make this game competitive, if I was Brian Kelly, I'd be going to the NFL because you've hit your ceiling at Notre Dame. I feel like if they just can't be competitive with Alabama. Would you agree there?
Well, I agree that there's going to be a bit of an outcry if Notre Dame loses this game, throw a score at me, 42-17, they're not competitive, that there is going to be a black mark, especially since they're going to go back to not playing in a conference that we just don't even consider Notre Dame. The public's going to be, we're done with them. Just, we don't want to see Notre Dame anymore.
Here's the interesting conversation that I've had throughout the last 12 hours. I was talking about how, look, if you want to go with deserving, put Cincinnati or Coastal Carolina in there. I think Cincinnati because they technically won their conference. Coastal didn't play in their conference championship. But if you're talking about the 4 best teams, that 4th best team to me right now is Georgia. I mean, I saw how they had a halftime lead on Alabama with Stetson Bennett at quarterback. Could you imagine how good of a game that could possibly be with JT Daniels now at quarterback? Todd Monken's really figuring things out as the offensive coordinator. Kirby Smart is doing what we had hoped that he would do in the offseason, in which giving the keys to Todd Monken and telling him, run your offense. And he's been doing it so well. And Georgia is a different team now.
So, Bash, you're right there with me on this. So I was sitting here at this point last year saying, okay, do we want to talk about the teams that deserve and earn the spots, or we want to talk about the 4 best teams? Because I was clearly saying before the playoffs were played, after the selections came out, Oklahoma's not the 4th best team in the country. They earned it. I agree with the selection. I understand it. I agree with it. Because the committee, they use all these pillars that they go to: conference championship, data points, not a bad loss, quality wins. But when they get boxed into a corner, then they always just fall back on, we just select the 4 best teams. Well, if you're truly going to select the 4 best teams, then last year you would have just selected Alabama as the 4th team. Because Alabama, sure as hell, was not going to be losing by 5 touchdowns to LSU at halftime. So Oklahoma was not the 4th best team last year. Similarly to what you're stating right there, I've been saying this the last few nights, that I believe, and again, they didn't earn it in any way, but all you had to do was watch Alabama and Georgia play. And until there was, like, even with Stetson Bennett's issues at quarterback, throwing that game away, missing wide receivers, forcing throws, not being able to make the kind of throws that you need to make at that level, with 10 minutes left in that game, that was a 27-24 down to the wire type game of just 2 elite teams going at it, even with all his blunders. Yes, Georgia is an elite team, and they're better than Notre Dame. If we just want to say, hey, Mark, hey, Bash, select the 4 best teams and we're good with it, then I'm going to have to think about it, but I'm probably going to come up with Georgia because I know that they're going to send them, and this isn't the end-all, be-all, but I think you know where I'm headed. They're going to send the most players to the NFL. They have that type of talent. So to put Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia in a tournament, those are the 4 most talented rosters in the country.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. Now, I think the playoff approach is just fine. You know, they had put Notre Dame in there. I feel like they fall back on that best teams. I'm really thinking they're picking the most deserving of the best teams, meaning, like, I mean, you know how they put these teams in the pods. You know how they have conversations with 3 to 5 teams, you know? So, like, this year it could have been, all right, we got Alabama, Clemson, number 1 and 2. So here is these 4 teams: Ohio State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. Let's discuss these. All right, Ohio State's more deserving than anybody here. Next, deserving Notre Dame, kind of thing. Like, I feel like that's the process for the committee, and a lot fewer words. And of course, the conversation is there. Is just, okay, they better be one of the best 7, 8 teams in the country. That's one of the most deserving teams in the country as well. And the fact that there is not, and I just have so much anger about the CFP committee because there's not enough transparency about what goes on there at all. Every year it seems like there's something different. Every single year. Like, one year head-to-head matters, the next year it doesn't. One year conference championship matters, the next year it doesn't. Like, there has to be consistency and transparency, or else we need to go back to the BCS computer system, or at least more variables, and expand this thing. That's all I got. You know, there are a lot of people unhappy today. There are a lot of people happy today. But there isn't this type of divide with a lot more variables. There's still a divide, just not as controversial. So, all right, I'll get you to your next caller. Just wanted to say.
Good stuff, Bash. Appreciate the call.
So.
Have a good one. All right, we got Nick Saban from his office. That's a good-looking office right there. All right, maybe a little revamp of the set during the off season. But I've mentioned this before. if you take me to somebody's kitchen, bathroom, living room, or I look at houses, I can tell you what I like and what I don't like, but to do it myself, I just don't have it in me. Oh, did I mess that call up? Please call back. I think I screwed up that phone. Maybe I didn't. Here we go.
Press 1 to
There we go.
or 2 to decline. The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
It's me, Roberto.
Hey, Roberto. How are you?
Good. So I heard the call, like the second previous caller talking about Maryland being better than Indiana and Northwestern.
Yeah.
Like, you kidding me?
He means that they've recruited. He means that, yeah, they're not. They played Northwestern this year and they lost by 40 points. So
They both played Maryland.
well, yeah, they lost
destroyed
it.
them.
Oh yeah, they got killed by Indiana too. What I think what he's saying is they've recruited better talent in the recruiting rankings. They've recruited better talent.
Recruiting isn't always everything.
Absolutely.
Though. Otherwise, Tom Herman would be competing.
Tom Herman
would be competing every year.
He'd be in the playoff, and Wisconsin would be 500 every year. You're right. Yep.
I mean, like Michigan, fair enough. I think Harbaugh's always missing a quarterback to turn that program into a contending one. But they just need to revamp their defense, I think. And Penn State just had a down year. But Maryland, I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, we can move on
They got
from the
destroyed
Maryland
by-
comment.
Yeah, we can move on from that.
So what you got?
I'm just looking forward to any New York State bowl matchup. Let's see who Cincinnati will face. Do they get in as New York Six over Coastal, or who's the other undefeated team? No.
It's down to those two, and maybe we let them both in.
So not every year recruiting wins equals wins. I mean, look at Urban Meyer 12-0 for Utah, or TCU had undefeated seasons. There's always some unknown team that will get a good year. In that case, it was Indiana, it was Coastal Carolina, BYU, then the UCS. I just don't get how they just disrespect teams like Northwestern, who, again, two Big Ten championship appearances in 3 years. So maybe they're turning the program around. Then Indiana, since Kevin Wilson was there, was from 4-win team turning into a bowl eligible team, and now they elevated to a top 10 team, possibly, depending on where they get ranked.
Well, Dabo Sweeney talks about being disrespected. Northwestern has to be one of the most disrespected teams consistently in the country. But we know what we get with Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald has built a program that is not going to contend every year. They have their down cycle years like last year, but generally they are now winning 8 and 9 games a year. They're an 8-4, 9-3 kind of program that actually turns out some NFL players that people actually look to notice. But no, they're not prolific on offense. They're strong on defense. They're really strong on defense this year. And they have proven year after year after year that they can play their level competition. They're not an elite program. I'm not selling them anywhere close to that. But they go out in non-conference play in bowl games now in recent years, and they go beat a Mississippi State team that was 8-4, and they go beat a Kentucky team that was 8-4, and they go beat a Utah team that had gone to the Pac-12 championship game. So regardless of what people think about their recruiting and that they don't have elite talent, they go out there against other conferences and they win the games, and they play well and they compete.
Yeah, what I just don't like is that people just view the Big Ten as a joke of a conference. You realize Penn State is very close to competing with us. Even last year when we were a very dominant team, if Penn State won that game, they go to the Big Ten championship and possibly compete for a playoff spot too.
Well, sure. Anybody who thinks that the Big Ten is joke. Now, I think Ten is just a joke overall. Well, those people don't know anything about football, so they because the results on the field say otherwise. All you have to do is look at what the Big Ten does outside of the conference, and it's respectable.
Even Iowa's a little dark horse this year as well.
Yeah, Iowa's a good team. All right. We good to go? Appreciate the call.
All right, thank you.
All right, folks, we got Lon Phillips on here thinking that the Buckeyes being in is an absolute embarrassment. Might be looking for other undefeated teams in the country that beat two top 15s. They should have gotten in, I guess. The other undefeated team that beat two teams ranked in the top 15, I guess we should have selected them instead. I don't know who that would be, but yeah, let's put that team in the playoffs.
The call or two to decline.
I think Lon wants LSU in the playoffs. That's why he's upset. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Nate the Pretzel Ring. How you doing?
Hey, Nate, what's going on?
Not much. I didn't really see the committee. I just followed Pete's show, so didn't really see the college playoff set, but I heard Ohio State's in it, Clemson, Alabama, and who else?
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. I mean, I'll give credit to Ohio State. They, although I'm a Michigan fan, but I'll give them yesterday. They played their butts off, and sorry, I'm not they played their butts off, and they earned it. Although Michigan kind of sucked, you will know they sucked this year. So congrats to Ohio State, but my other question is: do you think Coach Carolina will go in the New Year's Six Bowl or close to that?
What I truly think is that even though I'm supposed to give you definite opinions on everything that is asked of me, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to get selected. I know that no bowl game wants to have Coastal Carolina there because except for hardcore college football fans, people are not going to be attracted to watching Coastal Carolina play. So most likely, I believe Cincinnati is going to get the one Group of Five spot, and Coastal Carolina is going to default to the Liberty Bowl or whatever.
Yeah. Well, I just don't know why that Coastal Carolina is gets disrespected like that, and it kind of sucks to be that way. Like, if I'm a fan of Coastal Carolina, which I'm kind of bandwagon for this year, but I kind of feel bad for them. Why can't they just get respected like not much Ohio State or Alabama, but just respected like Cincinnati or Oklahoma, like that respect? But yeah, it's my only question to committee. So,
well, I don't know what I don't think that we've seen the top 25 rankings. I think they were ranked 12th last week by the committee.
Oh, so they didn't. So they didn't.
So how much respect do you want them to have?
I mean, much not. I mean, the respect like Cincinnati range.
Okay, so if Coastal Carolina was ranked 9th, you would say that they're respected, but since they're ranked 12th, they're not respected?
I mean, I know there's three difference, three whatever it is, difference, and I get they're 12th, but I wish they were in like a 10 for 11. I'll say that, but.
All right, so Coastal Carolina being 12th is not respected, but if they were 11th, that would show you some respect.
I would say that, but I mean, what's your opinion or what's your thought?
I think that it's extremely difficult.
Oh, yeah, it is.
Extremely difficult to rank Group of 5 teams against Power 5 teams. And that is every year because there is a definite disparity in the strength of schedules, and especially if you go down to the Sun Belt Conference, which is much improved, but still does not play at a level of football that we can compare it to Power 5 conference teams. So Coastal Carolina is undefeated, and they did play 3 really good teams in Appalachian State, Louisiana, and BYU. So I have them ranked. I have them ranked 13th.
I mean, I'll say, I'm okay with that. I'll do that. I mean, not do that. I'll prove that. Because I think they. I mean, back to what I said, get respect like in Cincinnati, but I'll take that back. I think they got respect because they're above the 25 rank, so that's good for Coastal Carolina because at least they're not 25. I mean, because they had a good season, I would say. But yeah, 2 of my teams are not going to bowl game this year, but I got root for some team I got to root for, but I still have the pick. But it's good talking to you, Mark, and I'll let you go to the next caller.
Hey, Nate, it's great to hear from you. You have a great day.
You too.
All right. I think we've had a nice little show here this afternoon. Thanks so much for everybody that came on today. We've got 258 on the line. We maxed out around 330, something in that range. So we probably had about 500 people in here at some point or another watching the selection show. We're going to have bowl selections come out later in the day, and you can be sure that I will have much to say about the bowl selections, and I will start my preview series of the bowl games. And if you have any suggestions or requests on content that you would like to see me post, certainly leave that in the comment section of any of the videos. Don't leave it here because I'll miss it, but leave it in the comment section of any of the videos. I want to thank BGPO Football Funk and Jesse for your Super Chat contributions. I want to remind everyone that you can contribute to the channel at Mark Rogers TV, either on Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. Just search Mark Rogers TV. Also, join us on Patreon. $5 a month on Patreon. You get an insider look to the voice of college football. What we do here, you get a lot of kind of inside baseball look. Watch parties. We also have exclusive live streams. Those are both per request. If any patrons are watching and wondering about those. And then we also have my predictions with bowl season coming up. Want to catch my predictions, which I'm not going to brag about 7-5 against the spread yesterday, but it would make you money because you make $91 on $100, 91 cents on the dollar from Vegas. So I missed 5 games. That would put you at 500 loss if you bet $100 per game, but you would pick up the 7 times 90, 630. You would have netted 130 on my picks yesterday, and that was even with Iowa State losing by 6 when I had 5.5, and Ole Miss losing at the wire against LSU. I was unfortunately looking at a nice little 9-3 day that turned into a 7-5. All right. Great to see everybody out there. And again, maybe we'll be back on live tonight. Just keep that notifications bell lit up so you will be able to get notified when we go live the next time. We will be on posting videos and on here live consistently through the holidays, through all the bowl games, and of course the playoffs and championship games. So keep it locked in here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And if you have any suggestions or requests for the channel, please leave them at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Shop Amazon, use that link. There it is. Grab the link in the description section of any of the videos to shop on Amazon, and you are helping us build the channel without any different shopping experience. It's exactly the same shopping experience for you, but you help us build the channel when you use the link from Amazon. Also, Super Chat's available. Then you got MarkRogersTV at Gmail. If you want to contact me, you can do it right there. Please smash the like button as well. All right, I'm going to go to work on previewing these games and breaking things down like only we do. Not me, not just me, all of us, like only we can here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Best discussion, debate, and analysis. That's our aim. That's our goal. That's our mission. Hopefully we achieve that today. We will try harder tomorrow. We will see you next time. I got some Christmas shopping, baking, and tree shopping as well with the kids for the rest of my day. Plus, I will be, of course, looking over these bowl matchups. See you soon.